You've probably had this a lot. But I really would like to dedicate this episode to my parents who have worked tirelessly. They have sacrificed so much to give me the life that I have had, which has allowed me to become the person that I am today. Without their support, their encouragement, their guidance, their everything, I wouldn't be here. So I think I wouldn't be able to do an episode like this without giving so much thanks to them and dedicating this to them.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Against All Odds podcast. My name is Daniel Coker, your regular host. And on this podcast, we aim to tell stories that will inspire, educate, and broaden the horizons of future generations. Our guest this week is a very special person. Actually, our first, you're the first medical doctor on our podcast. Oh. So congratulations. Our guest this week is Dr. Maxine Reindorf. Can I call you Doc or Maxine?
Maxine is fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Maxine is a registrar in Obs and Gynae with a London hospital. She holds a BSc, actually an MBBS qualification from UCL in London, University College of London. And additionally, I think as part, you tell a bit more about this during the conversation, but additionally, she holds a BSc in Human Genetics and Genomics, again from UCL. I think you have to tell us the difference between genetics and genomics. She's a product of the Haberdashers Asks School for Girls. And Maxine is passionate about cooking when she's not delivering babies and is often found helping her mother in her catering business. Maxine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
So tell us a bit about your journey. I mean, you come from a very sort of educated background. I mean, I know your dad, he's an IT cybersecurity expert, very high level person. And your mum as well, you've got a sister who's a high-flying lawyer in Dubai. Actually, I need to fly to Dubai to interview her. I really need to. I'm sure after she's seen this interview, she might agree to schedule something with us. So you come from that kind of background, and just tell our viewers a bit about your upbringing and just a bit about your journey so far.
I guess we have to start from the beginning then.
Yeah.
I think I'm very blessed to have grown up in a family where my parents were very much invested in bettering myself, bettering my siblings, giving us the best opportunities in life that they could. They worked tirelessly. They sacrificed to give us the best education possible. And they always said, as long as you have a good education, no one can take that away from you.
Okay.
And I think that really created the environment that we were growing up in. We always wanted to work our best, work our hardest, and of course to make them proud.
So this move, obviously you were privately educated. Haberdashers is private school, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So before that, were you in in the state system, or have you always been privately educated?
We've always been privately educated.
Okay. Was that, as you're saying, was that a conscious decision, or was just? I
think that's a decision my parents made quite early on when we were quite small. I think the area we grew up in, there weren't very many good schools around.
Okay.
And I guess with my elder sister, they made the decision that they would
make the
investment into education just to give us the best opportunities in life.
And what sort of experiences did you have in that sort of environment, the private school environment, that you feel kind of probably helped to build up your confidence, and to help you later on in life?
I think my story is a bit interesting. For the first few years of my life, I think I was very stubborn.
Okay.
In school, I didn't really want to do very much.
Really?
I knew I probably could, I just didn't want to.
Okay.
And so my parents, they tried to help me to build my confidence in other areas, doing lots of extracurricular activities.
Okay.
I was doing ballet, I was doing gymnastics, I was
Okay.
playing netball.
Okay.
And I enjoyed doing all of those things. And I think there came a point probably somewhere in year 4, year 5, and where finally I switched on and I was like, okay, it's time to do some work. Let's get going.
Okay.
And thankfully they were very patient with me up
Okay.
until that point.
Right. And then in terms of your siblings as well, obviously your sister's, she sort of pursued a legal career. Was there sort of guidance or direction from your parents as to career choices? Because you chose a medical profession, and your dad is obviously a computer person and all that. So was there sort of guidance in that area, or were you kind of left to find your own path?
I think we all very much found our own paths. My sister knew from quite early on that this is what she wanted to do, this is what she wanted to study. And I think I was also quite similar in that way. People ask me about when I decided I want to do medicine, when I decided I want to be a doctor. And I can't really pinpoint that time, but I always, as far as I can remember, I knew within myself that that's what I wanted to do, that's what I wanted to work towards. And our parents very much gave us the freedom, the room to make those decisions. In fact, they probably would have preferred if I had pursued a different career.
Really?
Yeah. But they supported me regardless in that choice.
So you obviously pursued science-related subjects in secondary school and ended up in UCL. Why did you end up in UCL? Just tell us a bit about the process of you getting into medical school.
I think I'd probably start that by saying that I was someone in school who enjoyed a lot of my subjects.
Okay.
I liked the sciences, but I also liked my humanities too. I liked my languages.
Okay.
So coming to the decision of medicine was quite difficult for me because I knew I'd be leaving behind a lot of the things that I also enjoyed, like my languages, writing, and those humanities subjects. So I decided to do 4 A-levels.
4?
Yeah. I did my maths, biology, chemistry, and then I decided to continue with Spanish as well because I didn't want to leave that behind. I really enjoyed it. And if I could have taken another, I would have taken French as well. But, you have to draw the line somewhere. So I think when I was applying, I was looking at universities that had good courses, courses that allowed you to have lots of hands-on time. UCL was a university that offered live dissection, which wasn't something that, not live, I mean cadaveric dissection, which isn't something that was offered in all the universities.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
And it also gave you the option to do lots of additional modules throughout the course. And I saw that there would still be opportunity for me to continue learning languages. So that's something that kind of drew me towards it. I was like, okay, this is a great course. It's not going to be just the medicine. There will be other things I'll be able to do alongside this. And that made it probably the most attractive course out of the medical schools that I applied to for me.
Okay. So this thing about languages, I heard somewhere, on the grapevine, somewhere, that you were taught how to speak your parents' local language even before you were sort of exposed, well, obviously exposed to English, but that was very key. Is that true?
Yeah. So I'm Ghanaian, we're Ghanaian.
Yeah.
We are specifically Ga people from Ghana. And of course, living here, you don't have much opportunity to learn the language. So my parents made the decision that whilst at home, they would speak to us only in Ga, so that we could have full command of the language. Knowing that when we went to nursery, we went to school, being children with very malleable brains, of course, we would pick up the English. So my sister, she started off speaking just Ga, and then she went to school, and then she learnt her English, and then me the same. I remember when I first started nursery, they would have to bring my sister to be a little interpreter. Until finally I figured things out. So
do you see yourself as Ghanaian, or do you see yourself as Black British in terms of identity?
I see myself as Ghanaian.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So again, this thing about languages, because studying medicine is difficult enough for most people, but then to add on languages as well, are you just gifted in that area, or did you have to work at it?
I think it depends. I think if you grow up having a bilingual upbringing, your propensity to learn further languages will probably be easier for you. And I think the research does reflect that. Once you have command of 2 languages, learning and building command of more is easier, because your brain is already used to working in those 2 different ways. Right. Whereas if you've always started with just 1 language, of course anybody can learn, but maybe people who already have the ability to speak a second language, it comes just maybe a little bit easier to them. And I think that definitely helped me. In my
so would you
career.
encourage our viewers who are watching, to probably think about taking on a second language, learning a second language?
I mean, languages are useful. We're living in a more globalized world. And I think when you go to other countries, it's respectful to try to speak a bit of their language, to try to understand a little bit. I'm not saying learn every single language, but if you feel so inclined, then why not? You know, it's a great second skill to have.
If you're enjoying this episode, I'd like you to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification, and also like, share, and comment. Now let's get back to this episode. So at UCL, you did a 6-year degree instead of a 5-year in some universities. Tell us a bit about that experience and what that entailed.
So when you study medicine, the degree is usually 5 years. In every university, there's a possibility to do something called intercalating, which is where you take a year to study another subject and gain a degree in that subject before coming back to medicine and completing that. So when I was at UCL, and I think that's the case in a few other universities, it was compulsory to do that. Whereas in other universities, people would choose to take that extra year to get an extra degree, but they wouldn't have to. So they could complete medicine in 5 years. For me, everybody had to do it. There were so many different options that you could do. Some people went and did like history of medicine. Some people went and did global health. I did human genetics and genomics, which
so tell us a bit about that. What's the difference between genetics and genomics? And
I mean, they come hand in hand. Genetics is about the study of genes,
the build up, genes,
but actually it's a lot more mathematical. It's looking about how genes are transmitted and on a population level, how that I guess different genes can penetrate and be expressed in different ways. And genomics is more about the entire human genome as a whole. It's a bit difficult to explain. But again, it's more on a population level than a case-to-case level.
And then your choice of obs and gynae, where did that come from?
It came, I guess, throughout my time in medical school.
Okay.
I went into medical school thinking that I wanted to do pediatrics because I loved children and I always thought that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
But going through my placements and things, being on the children's wards, I realised that as much as I love children, the realities of working with children that are unwell was quite difficult for me.
Okay.
And then I was thinking about what things do I like, what things are important to me in my work. I'm someone who's quite hands-on.
Okay.
So I wanted something that had some practical aspects to it, something that I could do with my hands.
Okay.
But then also I liked counselling patients, I liked consultations, I liked general medicine as a whole. And obs and gynae was something that brought all of those things together quite nicely for me.
Okay.
It has lots of parts to it. There's operating, there's scanning. It's very hands-on when you're on the labour ward. On the gynecology side, there's lots of counselling. And then, of course, we look after people with medical conditions and pregnancies. So you still have to keep up all your general medicine in that sense.
Okay.
So it allows you to do lots of different things every day.
Okay.
Which makes it difficult to get bored. It keeps things exciting, but it does also mean that there are lots of skills to learn. So the training is quite intensive.
Okay. So tell us about your typical day. I know you've been off this week, but your typical day, Maxine's typical day, what time do you wake up in the morning? Just run us through your typical day.
I think I would probably have to run you through my typical week.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
every day is different.
Okay.
But usually I wake up about 5:45, 5:50. I like to have slow mornings, so I give myself about an hour and a half in the mornings.
Okay.
I have my quiet time, my prayer time.
Yeah.
Then I'll get ready, have breakfast, get myself to work. We'll say on a Monday, I might...
Do you have to travel far to work or?
It's about a half-hour drive. It's not a long commute.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
One day I could be on the labour ward on call, which would be a 12.5-hour shift, like 8 to 8:30.
Wow.
Where you're seeing patients who come in labour, dealing with complications as they rise, and planning ahead to make sure that you're keeping everyone safe, which is fun. It can be stressful, but it's also such a privilege to be there when someone delivers their baby, to be involved in such a special time in people's lives. Another day I could be in the clinic, maybe the antenatal clinic, seeing pregnant women during their pregnancy and counselling them.
So who decides where you are at any...
The powers that be. It changes on a week-to-week basis.
Okay. Is that to break up the job, or is just where there's a need for, where there's a need? Is it sort of need driven, or is it kind of just to make sure that you're doing different things?
So it's because we have so many different services that we cover, and I work in a team of almost 25 to 30 junior doctors, as well as 16 consultants. Okay. So there's so many places to cover. You can't do the same thing every day. Okay. And you can't be on call every day. Right. So the rotas change to make sure that every area is covered. And everyone is still getting the training experience that they need to as well. Okay. So we have someone who oversees the rota. Which is a difficult job, but it means that it keeps the cogs turning.
Okay, so you do your 12.5 hour shifts, and then what? You get home like pretty late.
Yep. Eat, sleep, repeat.
And what do you do during your, when you've got downtime?
Depending on how much reserve I have, sometimes I just take the time to slow down. Recover, let my body catch up with the body clock that I always have to be changing. Okay. I like to run when I can.
Yeah, you said,
something I picked up during COVID.
How many kilometers do you run?
Nothing wild, probably like 4 or 5 kilometers. Okay, that's nothing too arduous. Right. But I'm hoping one day to build up to doing like a good 10 kilometers, and we'll go from there. Okay. Yeah.
So we actually met, not in a hospital labour ward, thankfully. I wasn't in a labour ward. But then we actually met at a social function where you were helping to, with the catering. And somebody said to me, "Oh, that's a doctor," and I'm thinking, what's a doctor doing, here helping catering, catering at that function? where did this interest in food and cooking and everything come from? And I know you have additionally a passion for baking, not just cooking, but baking. Where did this come from?
Well, I will have to tell you about this by talking about my lovely mum.
Okay.
She is the most incredible cook that I know. She makes the most incredible food.
I can vouch for that.
And growing up, I think the kitchen was always the center of the home.
Oh, okay.
Food is a big part of our family, our family life, our family functions.
Okay.
Food brings us together.
Okay.
And my mum has set up a catering business,
Okay.
which was what she was doing for this function that you were at. And I came along to help. Food has always been important in our lives. And I guess it's a really lovely way to bring people, family, friends together, have something nice to enjoy together whilst we catch up. So I do really love that about, food or feeding
and then what about
people.
The baking part?
Yeah.
What about the baking part?
I think I could be guilty of being one of those lockdown bakers.
Okay.
Everyone's baking banana bread in lockdown. I was working all through the lockdown.
Okay.
But baking was something new that I picked up because there were lots of recipes everywhere.
Yeah.
No one really baked in our house, so I guess it was something new I wanted to try, and it just became one thing after another. Things turned out well, so I tried new things, and then you just keep going, and I built an interest that way.
What was it like during lockdown for you as a doctor?
I guess our experience was very different in comparison to, I guess, people were on furlough or people were working from home, and it was very isolating in that way.
Yeah.
We were always at work, which was difficult in terms of the nature of the work, but then it was also nice to be able to have something that meant I would have to leave my house every day and still see my colleagues every day. I was a foundation trainee during COVID, so that means I was 1 to 2 years out of medical school, and we were on this big rota where we were covering COVID wards. I spent a lot of time on the COVID respiratory unit, which was a difficult time. I think I developed a lot of skills there, which I probably wouldn't have otherwise. But the cases you see, the things that you see happen was very difficult. We were right in the thick of it when COVID first hit. Because I was living at home at the time, I didn't want to be exposing my family unnecessarily. So I moved out to be nearer to the hospital.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I was just going to work, coming back, going to work, coming back, and I don't miss that time. I don't miss that time, is what I'll say.
So how do you deal with pressure? As a doctor on the labour ward, it's like cesarean sections, and there's a complication, and you've got to call a consultant, and this is happening. And how do you deal with all that pressure? How do you stay calm and when everything around you is going crazy?
I think part of it might be character types. Some of it might be inherent. I'm someone who can kind of internalize their storm and just work through my thoughts. So some people under pressure will externalize their storm and make everybody else
part of it.
But when you're in an emergency situation, that's never helpful. So you have to just go back to your basics. You go step by step by step, going through what you know. And it's all about just problem solving, but problem solving on your feet. And
quick.
Exactly. And I think there comes a time with more experience where instinctively you will just know what to do. But whilst you're still on that learning pathway, you still need to take that time to think and then make sure that you're always asking for the help when you need it, getting that senior support if you do need it, to make sure that you're still keeping all your patients safe.
So if you hadn't pursued a career in medicine, what other career would you have seen yourself possibly pursuing?
I think back to when I was doing my UCAS applications, or about to do my UCAS applications, and I think I had a few weeks where after years of knowing I wanted to do medicine, I thought actually maybe I will go and do history and Spanish in uni and I don't know, become a journalist or something like that.
Okay.
I do wish I had perhaps pursued studying languages more. I mean, it's never too late.
Yeah.
I would have loved to work with maybe like the UN as an interpreter or something like that.
Okay.
Now, let's say if I left medicine, I'd probably just open a spa health retreat in the mountain somewhere and just have some peace and quiet.
Do you ever see yourself, you did mention that you kind of like a hands-on sort of approach or hands-on role. Do you ever see yourself possibly progressing through the ranks and maybe looking at health management and working with the UN, World Health Organization, something like that? Maybe policy making around, I don't know, something like that. Do you ever see yourself in an office type role, or would you find that too boring?
No, it's funny you asked me that because that's exactly something I would love to do once I've built the experience in my career. I think an ideal job for me would be a 50-50 split of doing clinical work, but then also doing policy-based work. Okay. Because, I mean, sounds cliche. We all go into medicine because we want to help people and help make a difference. And you can do that on a person-by-person basis, or you can do that on a large-scale, national or global basis, or you can do a bit of both. Okay. And that's what I would love to do at some point in the future. Okay.
So moving on to a question that probably our young viewers, might be interested in. So you're obviously young, professional, articulate, very well educated. As a young person on the social scene, what are some of the challenges that people with your background face on the social scene? Probably meeting other people who are in a similar sort of space, in terms of people who are also, because you're so busy, you're either in the hospital, you're in the ward, you're doing this, you're doing that. How do you find time to socialize and to meet other people and to hang out, just live a normal life?
I think these days everyone is working so much, regardless of their profession. If you allow it to, your work can take over your life. Okay. So I think you have to be intentional about not allowing that to happen, and being intentional about prioritizing the things that are important to you, like your family, your friends, relationships that matter to you. Otherwise it can be so easy to just let everything kind of slip away. But I think sometimes there does come a time where you're just so tired and exhausted that people do need to give you a bit of grace just to recover. But I think that you get out of your relationships what you put into them. So unless you invest that time, you may not have the friendships, the relationships, the family relationships that you want to. So you have to be intentional about creating that time.
What sort of skill sets would you say have helped you on this journey so far? Because the first time I met you, you come across, and we've kind of known each other, I don't know, probably best part of 6 weeks or something, or 5 weeks, something like that. Yeah. And I tend to interact with a lot of people, and I can get a feeling for people like that. And you come across as somebody who's very quiet, sort of probably keeps yourself a little bit, but also very, very intelligent, very intellectual, And I was actually surprised when I asked you to come on the podcast, because I wasn't sure whether you're going to come, because you're not the typical kind of out there person, But then over the past few weeks, I've seen a certain I've seen a side of you which I didn't see that first day, which is like a confident side. It's like, oh no, let's do this. We can do this. Kind of thing. What skill sets do you think prepared you for, who you are today? In that regard, I don't know if I'm making sense, but you naturally seem to be somebody who probably keeps to yourself.
I think I'm more on the introverted end of the spectrum.
Okay.
Especially when I first meet people.
Okay.
That's my tendency.
Okay.
I think as I get to know someone, then I sort of unravel a bit more.
Okay.
Which is actually quite the opposite to my work, because you meet someone for the first time and instantly you have to be involved quite intimately in their lives and ask about all the personal details.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I'm someone who I can relate to people on a sort of emotional level. I'm quite tuned into how people might be feeling.
Okay.
I would like to think that I'm a good listener.
Okay.
And those things do help me in my work. Where somebody might be more extroverted and go in with a lot of kind of bubbliness and a bit more of a gung-ho approach. I have a bit of a softer approach, and people have different things that work for them.
Yeah.
And I think you just have to understand yourself for who you are and not try to, I guess, be someone else. Just work within your capacities and the skills that you do have.
Okay. What are some of the challenges you've experienced? Because a very topical thing that we see these days is junior doctors going on strike because they want more money and all that. I mean, what are your thoughts about that? Do you think the government could do a lot more to help junior doctors? Because I think medicine's, I've got a brother and a sister who are doctors. I know it's not an easy qualification to pursue, and having spent 6 years of your life, it's actually more than that, because if you specialize and all that, it's a lot longer than that.
Yeah, so I mean, we spend 5 to 6 years in medical school. You do 2 years of your foundation training, so that's 8 years. And then you work within a specialty. My specialty, the training is 7 years. So,
wow.
That's a long time of your life,
yeah.
and a very important time in your life, where you're just tirelessly working away. I think the junior doctor strikes, the dispute is fundamentally over pay, but actually it's to do with so many greater things than that. We're at a point now where the NHS is in absolute crisis. It is at breaking point. And part of that is, higher patient population. We have more patients than we ever had. There's so much more demand on the services. But also we're in the biggest staffing crisis that we've ever had. People are leaving in droves because the working conditions are so difficult. In my specialty, we work hand in hand with midwives. And we have such an acute shortage of midwives. We have a shortage of doctors, which means every day when you're going to work, everyone is doing double, triple the work that they need to be doing. Patients aren't getting the care that they need. And what can we do to retain people? Pay them better. And that will help solve our staffing troubles. Help people to stay rather than moving to other countries, and do a little to help in the NHS crisis that we do have. But that's not the only solution. I think there's a lot more that needs to happen on the political side of things, in the structure of the NHS, how things are run. Perhaps things could be made to run more efficiently. Sorry, I could ramble about this for a long time.
Let me ask this question. So in the US, they've got a very different system. They don't have an NHS, right? If you don't have insurance, you've had it. Everything you've got to pay for. I remember I went to America once, and my son wasn't well, and we took him to the hospital, and they just gave him paracetamol or something, Calpol or whatever it was. So I came back to London, and the bills started coming. Okay. And they kept coming, you know, this and this and this and that. Do you see the US style of people having to pay for everything as the way forward to solving this NHS crisis?
I sincerely hope that that won't be the case, because I think people would really suffer here.
I was going to think that. I think that.
People end up in absolute bankruptcy because of medical bills. Things that we take for granted here, like getting an asthma inhaler, can be the entirety of your month's pay because that's how much they cost.
Wow.
So that is what we are on the brink of. If, you know, things don't change and we end up in a privatized system, that's what people face.
Wow.
So I think we really need to be looking to do everything that we can to maintain the health service that we have, which allows people to have healthcare that is free at the point of access. If that should happen, I think it would be a very big shame for something that has been built over the last 60, 70 years in this country, which is one of the greatest things to speak of for this country.
So, what advice would you give to a young person out there who's probably thinking of pursuing a medical career? I know it's really difficult to get into medical school, and there's a lot that goes into it emotionally, you know, and they're wondering, is it worth it? And then also with everything that's going on in the media about doctors saying they're not being paid well and all that, what would you say to somebody who's having these thoughts in their mind? Is it worth it, you know, for them to pursue this dream?
I think that's a difficult question. I think it depends on your reasons for wanting to go into medicine.
Okay.
What that career means to you personally.
Okay.
I think it's something that you have to consider carefully. You remember I was saying that when I said I wanted to do medicine, even some of my family advised me against it, but I knew that that was what I was meant to do, and so I worked towards it.
Okay.
If you feel that sense of purpose, you feel medicine is for you, then by all means go for it. Seek mentorship, seek support, do everything that you can to make your application the best that it can be, but also be mindful of the current context that we're in. But maybe you shouldn't make your decision based on it, because there is still medicine practiced all over the world. The current condition that we're in, it may get better, it may get worse. So you can't even make a decision based on that. What you need to think about is there something you feel is suited best to you, your character traits? Is there something else that you may want to pursue? So think about that too. And then come to a decision on the basis of that. But I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer.
That's good. So, Maxine, what do you think about this podcast and what we're trying to do?
I think it's an amazing thing that you're doing. I think when I was growing up and you were in school and, you know, somebody said, I don't know, I want to study chemistry in uni, someone will say, oh, what will you do with that? You know, are you going to be a teacher? But actually there are so many different roles out there, and I think from this podcast what you've really nicely shown is that there's no one path to get anywhere. I think a few of the people that you've interviewed have kind of pivoted at some point. So you know that committing to one thing doesn't determine your path forever. It shows that there are so many options out there, and that there are a lot of us in the field doing good things, which I think is really important for our younger generation to see.
That's fantastic. So you're the first medic and one of our youngest people to come on the podcast. That's amazing. Anyway, so at this point, I just want to say that thank you very much, Maxine, for making the time to come on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And if you like this episode, I'd like you to leave some comments in the comment section below. Like this video, this episode, subscribe and share, so that we can build and grow this platform. I would also like to thank a couple of people who have helped us. I'd like to thank Douglas of I Trust Limited, who've supported us. And then also Matthew Folson as well, who's also supported us, someone that I went to school with. And if you want to contact Maxine and her mum's catering business as well, we'll put the details in the comment section below so that you can book them for your next events. And perhaps, I can't guarantee, perhaps she just might be helping her mum on that day. Maxine, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.